Hi, y'all. You made it in. I'm so happy to see you.
Good afternoon. I'm happy to see you all as well. I'm sure you're all here because Alicia Levi was on the agenda. LeVar was showing me a feed that came through Twitter of the line of all of you waiting outside to get into the room. I asked him to forward it to me so I could send it to my 3 kids to let them know that people wait in line. I left him out of it. Yeah. It is such a pleasure to be here today to have this conversation with LeVar and with all of you about the importance of children's literacy. I've been coming to South by Southwest EDU for a very long time, and I always enjoy the experience to collaborate with thought leaders in the space who are thinking about what comes next in ensuring that children have the opportunity to learn both inside and outside the classroom, formal and informal settings, preschool through higher ed. This event has evolved in such a remarkable way. I know a lot of you have been part of that evolution. And so today's conversation, I'm thrilled to have about children's literacy with someone that I think has influenced it as much as anybody in the space. For those of you that aren't familiar with Reading is Fundamental is a very simple mission to ensure that all children have the opportunities that literacy provides. We've been around for over 50 years. We've distributed over 400 million books to over 50 million children in communities across the country. We've done this by engaging literacy advocates in communities all over the country, educators, parents, volunteers, who know the simple truth that we know, that I know LeVar knows, that if a child can read, they can achieve anything. Anything is possible if they can read. You
can applaud for that.
Yes.
That's allowed, absolutely allowed.
And we'll take just a quick moment here to run a quick clip on the history of Reading is Fundamental.
The green eggs, the yellow brick roads. Remember building fortresses, spinning straw into gold, solving mysteries, pulling a sword from stone. Books were your fantasy world, where you met new characters, discovered new places, explored dreamlands. Now imagine no escapes, no fantasies, no inspiration, nowhere to dream. Imagine a childhood without books. In underserved communities, only 1 in 300 children owns a book. It's time for the next chapter. Reading is Fundamental was created to empower underserved children to take the future into their own hands through book distribution and family and community engagement programs. RIF aspires to ignite a culture of reading. Kids need to be able to explore, imagine, and dream big so they can discover their passions, their interests, and experience the world. They need the superheroes, magical lands, and secret languages of books. Investing in kids is investing in the future. Anything becomes possible. RIF is a tale of opening books, minds, and ultimately, new worlds. All by putting books in the hands of the children that need them the most. Help give underserved kids the chance to write their own stories. Book people, unite.
So I always love coming to South by Southwest EDU because it's an amazing intersection of, again, thought leaders who think about the intersection between learning and outcomes and technology. And for Reading is Fundamental and for LeVar, technology has been an integral part of our work. I think LeVar and I are kindred spirits. I recall my first job in education was actually in the Educational Technology Center of the University of Maryland, where technology was about distance learning and sending courses out through cable. LeVar started his journey leveraging the medium of the time, the technology of the time. It was television, right? And found amazing ways to inspire generations of people, of children around reading, right? Whether it was through reading Rainbow or his work in Star Trek, starting with Roots. But what's really exciting for our conversation today, and by the way, I encourage all of you to be part of the conversation. I've got my list of questions that I've written up that I'm anxious to hear from LeVar about. But I encourage all of you that are in the room and those of you that are outside the room to send your questions through as well. This will be an exciting discussion between all of us. So please share those questions. But for today's discussion, LeVar has evolved with the changing technologies. You've identified what's coming, and you've found ways to leverage those technologies to influence children around literacy. So I'd love to hear from you. Tell us about your journey. How did you use these technologies? How did you center on reading? And how did you get to now?
Wow, that's an easy story.
It's a loaded question.
If you've got a couple of hours. It all for me, this all for me begins with my mother, Irma Jean Christian. I am the man that I am because that woman was the woman that she was. I was raised by an extraordinary human being. And my mother was an English teacher. That was one of that was her first career. And so I grew up in a house where reading was expected. It was mandatory. You couldn't opt out of reading in my mother's house. And I think one of the greatest gifts she gave to me was that she not only read to me and my sister, she read in front of me all the time. My mom always had 2-3 books going for her own personal enjoyment. So I grew up in a household where reading was like breathing. You just did it because you did. And the Roots experience for me was one that really introduced me to the potential power of the medium to actually change people's belief systems, to change the way people think. And 8 nights of television with Roots, we changed the way this nation frames its conversation around race, around slavery, the original sin of these United States. And we are still trying, obviously, to grapple with that essential issue that is very much alive for us in this country, in this culture. And then being able to be a part of Gene Roddenberry's vision of the future, where we actually get to reflect that the possibility exists that we will solve all of these problems that we're grappling with in the present, in some future incarnation of ourselves, and the hopefulness that that brings to the journey that can oftentimes feel so overwhelmingly overwhelming, right?
Well, I think that's true. And when we think about literacy and the opportunities, right, what's possible?
Right.
What do we talk about? We talk about, actually we talk about children. What can children become? What can they accomplish? Where can they go? How is education a great equalizer? How do we make sure that every child, no matter what race or religion or socioeconomic background, has an equal playing field to play off of?
That's right.
And the foundation for that is literacy. If you can read, you can achieve.
Yes.
You can learn all of these other things. And I feel like you focused on that very early.
Well, more than anything else, that's what my mother taught me, that there were no limits on me save the ones that I imposed upon myself, and that any limit that I came up against was going to be self-imposed.
Well, and the scary truth in America today is that there are 25 million kids in this country today that aren't reading proficiently.
Right.
37% of high school graduates graduate reading proficient. That is a troubling truth, and one that I believe is a community here, thought leaders, brilliant. This room is full of brilliant people who are changing the world. Let's provide that baseline solution for kids. Let's make sure they can read, and then we can move forward, because we shouldn't accept that. It shouldn't be acceptable that kids in America today can't read.
It absolutely shouldn't. The real truth is that reading and literacy is a birthright. Every human being deserves to be literate in at least one language, because in my view, if you're literate, you're free, right? No one can pull the wool over your eyes. You are free and independent And as a free and independent thinker, you have the ability to pick up a book, right? Take a look and find out for yourself, right? It's catchy, but it works. Find out for yourself whatever it is that you're asking about, and no one has the power to define your world for you. That, to me, is freedom.
Well, and you embody, right, these ideas. You're a consummate storyteller, but you also, I've walked down the hall with you a couple places now. We've had this amazing opportunity to spend time together. And everywhere I go with you, somebody stops you, right? You've impacted their lives. You've impacted their lives around literacy, around reading. But I think what is a little bit of a hidden truth is that you have been an innovator in leveraging technology and mediums to drive that message home.
Right.
If you were still driving your message just through television, you wouldn't be reaching as many kids. We have to meet kids where they are.
No, when I brought Reading Rainbow back in 2012 for the digital generation, it was in an effort to see if we couldn't translate the success that we had in television to a new and emerging medium. I didn't know the answer to the question, but that's what the journey was about, to find out the answer. And we found out that, yes, it works. When you expose kids to a robust library of books and videos, part of the magic sauce is that we combined the real world through the video field trip with the literature to cement in the child's mind that the world is a place of experience and that I belong in that experience, that world is a place for me. And having a child see themselves alive and successful in the world is as important as anything else in their personal growth and development. Seeing the world as a safe place to be frees our creativity.
So you developed this product called Skyberry.
Right.
It's a remarkable resource. It's amazing. It does all of those things. It allows children to relate and see themselves in an environment and be engaged and therefore interested in learning. It houses over 1,000 ebooks, but it also has amazing video experiences for kids, interactives, motivational activities, lesson plans for those educators that need that resource.
There's a
as
whole
well.
branch of Skyberry that's EDU, dedicated, designed and dedicated for teachers to use in the classroom as a supplement to their reading curriculums.
And the user experience is phenomenal because it's designed, like you can hear when LeVar talks about it, you see it in the experience on the app because it's designed with a child in mind.
It is.
A child's journey, a child's experience, a child's ability to relate.
To explore their world. The paradigm in the app is the child is in the cockpit of their own hot air balloon, and out in front of them are islands in the sky. And if you want to read books about animals, go to Animal Kingdom Island. And a child has an opportunity to self-direct their journey based on their reading appetites. Our love of reading is really connected to what our passions are. And giving a child an opportunity to explore their passion through literature is the thing that turns that flame on, right? It goes from a spark to a full-on fire when they get involved in the selection of the literature that they read. And
this is why I believe LeVar and I are kindred spirits. RIF is about choice and access.
Right.
Kids learn when they care, when they can engage. I mean, that's the biggest trick for any educator. How can I make this relatable so they want to learn and they want to take it to the next step? I think what's so remarkable about how you've leveraged the medium of today to deliver this experience for kids is that you've created this amazing tool called Skyberry, and you're making a big donation of that resource. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that.
I am really happy to announce today that Skyberry, LeVar Burton Kids Skyberry, will heretofore be in the hands of RIF as part of their digital solution to continue to provide millions of books to children so that they might experience the joys of the written word.
I think it's amazing, right? It's amazing to think that a team like yours that is forward-thinking, again, that's thinking about what's the problem we're trying to solve and how can we do it in a way that brings outcomes that can engage children.
As it turns out, it's not rocket science. Really, it really is a matter of putting the stories in their hands and the opportunity for them to self-direct their journey and just make sure that they have quality media to absorb, right, in terms of the books and the videos. And we can change the world, y'all. We really can. We can change the world with literacy. It's the key to freedom. I genuinely believe that.
I couldn't agree more. I think that there are so many problems that we're all trying to solve. This is a problem we can solve.
This is a problem we can solve.
This is a problem that we can solve, and we do it through innovation and being willing
for
to take
this
risks.
Generation, absolutely.
Right. LeVar's talked often about, when we've talked about the risks, right? You didn't know where the journey was going to end, but you knew you had to take it.
I had no idea how to take a television brand and turn it into an app and a digital concern. And I was lucky enough to be blessed with amazing people around me for the entire journey, which gives me an opportunity to introduce the CEO of LeVar Burton Kids and the one person who believed in this relationship from the very beginning, laid the foundation and followed it through till the last dot on the last page was dry. Ladies and gentlemen, Sangeeta Patel. And if you'll indulge me one more second, sitting next to Sangeeta is my partner of over 30 years, my wife, my ride or die, Stephanie. Kozark Burton is in the house.
I'm so glad you did that for many reasons, because they're remarkable women, but also because it takes your network. You have to activate your network to impact change. And if I would challenge all of you with one thing, is both you leave South by Southwest, and I always leave here so inspired. I always leave, I feel like I've learned so much. I've been able to collaborate with people that I don't get to see that often, who have their own great ideas. And then I go back to my team and share all of my thoughts, and they wish that I didn't travel so much to these kinds of events. But I think one of the things I would challenge everybody here today to do is join us, right? Join us. We want to activate our network. You are our network. To activate this, how can we think collectively about solving this particular problem? And then imagine what we can achieve. We don't know how we'll get there, but we know we can.
We don't even know what the next top technology will be that we will need to be on. We just know that we'll need to be there with stories, right?
And we need to be on it. We need to be thinking about what comes next. I think that, again, is something that maybe your experience can carry for a lot of the people in the room. You don't know what comes next, but you know you need to be there. How do you approach that? When you thought, how do I transfer a television property to an app? How did you move forward?
The watershed moment was the iPad. When the iPad came out, then it became very clear that what we would be able to do is combine both literature in the form of e-books, digital books, and video field trips, which were the hallmarks of the formula that was so successful on TV for all of those years. So that was really a big aha moment when we realized we're going to be able to put books and videos side by side in a service. And then the rest sort of evolved with investment and team and innovation and failure and all of those things that go along with bringing something to life.
Isn't that the important thing? You have to be willing to fail.
Absolutely.
You have to be willing to take risks. I am convinced that innovation is about being willing to take risks and knowing that some things aren't going to work. But if you're afraid to take those chances, you're never going to find the next thing, right? And the exciting thing for Reading is Fundamental, again, an organization that's been around for 50 years, we've continued to innovate over the years, but what's so amazing about this gift is it allows us to integrate, right, a digital experience for those digital natives of today that really want to experience it that way with a print experience, because I don't think it's an either or.
I don't believe so either.
I think it's really critical to recognize, again, if you're going to meet kids where they are, some of them aren't going to be digital.
Right.
Like, I know one of the questions that's floating around is not just how do kids prefer, but what do you prefer? Would you rather have a book? Would you rather read on an e-reader? I have an 18-year-old daughter that literally carries Shakespeare books in her purse. She's got a bag like this big. She hates e-readers. My son doesn't like to use print.
Right.
He's like, why would I carry that big device? But I think for the real opportunity for us, the thing that we're so excited about is the idea that we can bring these two pieces together and again, serve the kids with solutions that are relevant to them. I think I'm just looking at the screen here. It's kind of a 50-50 split from the audience on your preferred.
No, it's not.
Oh, wait, it's changing. It's changing. No, voting. Book still wins.
Well, here, allow me to say this about that. And I'm with you, Alicia. I definitely believe in a balanced solution. For me, where kids are concerned, I don't care. I just want kids to read. I don't care if it's a bound book. I don't care if it's on a digital device. Now, I know that we have to have a conversation about what's age appropriate for children in terms of their screen time and age. But we were supposed to or should have had the same conversation about TV. Well, I guess we probably didn't, because that's why we're all here. Huh? So we're a generation that's somewhat of a cautionary tale, as it turns out.
But the trick is to meet kids where they are,
Yes,
right? If we're doing our
absolutely.
jobs, we're thinking of all the platforms, of all the tools. It's a multi-platform, multi-dimensional universe. And our job, if we're doing it well, is to serve our audience. For us, our audience is kids.
Right. For me, I travel a lot. I'm able to carry, I have a library on my iPad. I carry a library around. For me, that is a miracle. Look,
You built a library for kids in Skyberry.
I'm 2 generations removed from slavery, y'all. 2, okay? Had I been born in a slightly earlier time frame, it would have been illegal for me to know how to read. You feel me? This is critically important to the future of this world. Educating the populace, having an informed and educated populace is essential to a functioning democracy.
Well, and if a child can read, if an adult can read, I mean, there's an adult literacy crisis in this country today as well, but if an adult can read, they can vote.
Right.
They can code, they can STEM, they can do all the things that we talk a lot about at conferences like this, but if they can't read, then they can't achieve those things. They can be their best self, they can live their best life with that foundational
But
element.
it won't be to the fullest potential that they would have had literature been a part of their puzzle.
I think that that's right. And I wanted to jump to a question because I think it's directly tied to what we were just talking about. So this is from the audience. Your representation has been so valuable with children, especially students of color. Any tips on how to instill a love of reading for reluctant readers?
Absolutely. Parents ask me all the time, how do I get my kid to read more? And I ask them 2 questions. Number 1, do your kids see you reading?
Modeled behavior is so important.
Absolutely critical. Remember, I said my mom not only read to me, she read in front of me, right? So that's number 1. Number 2, what's your kid passionate about? Because like I said, it's our passions that drive our reading interests, right? So if your kid loves superheroes, then damn it, buy your kid comic books, because I don't care what the gateway drug is. Okay? Because once that light bulb goes off, then you're mine, right? Then you can't get enough reading in your life. And that's when it gets really good.
Well, I think that that's right. And the medium shouldn't matter. Our challenge is make sure it's available anywhere. If a kid wants to read print, great. If they want to read a comic book or a graphic novel, great. It's engaging them, right? If it's in a digital format.
Or if it's a traditional bound format, let's not forget, the book is a pretty sophisticated tool. It's a delivery system that actually achieves in remarkable ways its purposeful intent.
Innovative at its time.
It was indeed. It was indeed. So I'm not for throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I do acknowledge, though, that going forward, a lot of our information and a lot of our reading is going to be consumed digitally. Why? It's just not so sustainable to continue to make books out of trees, right? But we will always print children's books because I believe that it's that lap experience that's so important and fundamental to the human experience. And of course, children's books, you know, we need to print them for the illustrations because they're awesome, right? And, you know, there'll be art books in certain categories, but again, we will always have books. That will never go away, right?
And I think when you and I are sitting here in 10 years, as I'm sure we will be, whatever the format of the day is, we'll be talking about how do we use it, right?
How do we leverage it as an engagement factor to deliver our message that reading is the way to go?
I think that that's right. We have another audience question here. How do we convince lawmakers in an era of increasing technology use that public libraries are not only valuable, but essential? That's a great question.
It's a great question.
Whoever said that should stand up and take a bow.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. Librarian? She works with libraries. It's a great question. Libraries are, I think, one of the most underutilized resources in our nation. They're amazing places to hang out and source information and screen time if that's what you need. I mean, our libraries are really pretty sophisticated for the most part.
Yeah, I think that's right. And in the education, in the K-12 setting, right, the movement in so many places to, I won't say undervalue, but to limit access to media specialists in classrooms. This is an issue that's resonating throughout the K-12 space. It's a real concern because, to LeVar, to your point, libraries aren't just about finding a book, right? It's about collaboration. It's about what we're doing here. We're collaborating. We're finding comfortable space. We're finding an environment where we can learn. And libraries are so essential to that. And it's so important that we continue to have that space available because libraries are also an important resource for the underserved, right? For those that, the video that you saw earlier on RIF, only 1 in 300 kids have a book to call their own. We go out constantly. We're doing what we call book celebration events. We go out and we create this excitement in schools and communities across the country for kids where they can come in, they can choose a book, they can put their name in the book. It's a book that they can call their own. We create an engaging experience around reading. And every event I've gone to, every single one, I'll have children come up to me, and it's life-changing. It's truly life-changing. They'll come up to me and they'll say, I've never had a book in my house. Are you sure that I get to take this home? Or they'll say, I have a brother at home, and do you think I could take 2? It's not and once or twice. It is every time that we go out. Access to resources that enable kids to be engaged in learning come through libraries. They come through a lot of different places, but libraries are critical. I can't answer your question on how we get lawmakers to move along on that.
Change the lawmakers. Y'all see why I'm so excited about this partnership? Why I could not be happier to have the Skyberry live on in the hands of RIF, because I know how important it is to their mission to continue to put books in the hands of kids who need them most.
Well, it's a remarkable thing. It's a remarkable thing. It's an amazing thing to take on. And we're committed to ensuring that we do it the justice that it deserves. We have another question. I think it's a good one as well. With limited funds, what are some ultra important books to have on a classroom shelf? I might extend that audience question to say to have on your home shelf.
Yeah, right.
Right. To again, to LeVar's point, you know, his mother. One of the first pictures I saw that LeVar showed me of him, was a picture of his mom. Those models that influence the direction that you go are so important. So home libraries are as critical as classroom libraries. And I would say to whoever answered this question and to the entire audience, RIF has for years curated high quality libraries. But ultimately what we do is we put the choice in the hands of the users. So I can tell you my favorite books. I can tell you the books that I think have the biggest impact in classrooms. But ultimately, I think the people that answer that question the most and the best are the ones that are actually in the classroom or at home, because it's about who's in your classroom, who's at your home, what are the books that are going to relate most to the child that you're caring for.
That's right.
And so it's a great question, but I think the answer lies with each of us in the environment in which we live. I don't know if you would add anything to that.
I couldn't add anything to that if I tried.
Read aloud is such an important part of school and learning. What is your opinion on audiobooks? So while you're taking a drink, I'm just going to jump in and say that one of the most remarkable pieces of what Skyberry has developed is that every book that's available in a digital format comes with audio as well. And I think that it's critical for different types of learners, for different ways that learners learn, but also, as we talk about modeled behavior, I'm convinced that we can solve the literacy crisis in America today. I'm convinced of it. But there's no one lever that we pull that solves that problem, right? There are so many impacting factors, right? Do you have parents that can read? Do you have parents that can speak English? Are you living in an environment that's conducive to learning, right? It spans home and school. And so audio books or access to a read aloud, which I think is so critical, I think is an important element to helping children to understand how to read. Now, how you leverage that tool is very subjective, but the fact that you need it, I think, is undeniable.
I think it's an incredibly valuable tool. Again, for those who have a difficult time focusing in the activity of reading, if they can get the same imaginative experience from having it read to them, then yay. Right? And it's no less than reading a book, because what are you doing when you're reading it? You're making up the pictures in your head. You're imagining the action, and that's the same thing that happens when you listen to an audiobook. So I love audio literature and have done a lot of audio literature. And for me, it's absolutely a legitimate way of reading.
Well, I think that's right, and I think it's very aligned to the theme that we're talking about today, and I really believe the theme of South by Southwest in some ways. We should be platform agnostic.
Yes.
Right? The platform, I'm not sure, matters as much. Some platforms drive different outcomes better than others. I think that's an absolute truth. But we should be platform agnostic in the resources, in the way we deliver these resources.
I want to be known for the stories that I tell, not the device on which it was consumed. It is our storytelling that binds us together as people, right? It's how we define who we are, why we're here, where we're going, right? It's through our storytelling that we actually understand our purpose here. So there's no other thing that's more essential to culture than the preservation and sharing of our stories.
Yeah, I felt like some of the sessions here have been about storytelling right throughout the conference for the last couple of days. And I couldn't agree with that more, right? So the platform shouldn't matter.
Right.
Our challenge, right? The people in this room and at this event and throughout this community, our platform is to figure out what's the platform today, what's the platform of tomorrow, but how do we tell those stories? How do we convey those learning objectives, right, and outcomes that are so critical? But how do we make sure that ultimately we're delivering resources in a way that a child can consume and learn? It shouldn't matter what that format is. We've got another great question here. LeVar, we would love to hear some of your favorite books.
Wow. Well, I'm a big science fiction fan. Spoiler alert. I'm a huge Octavia Butler fan. So if you don't know Octavia, you're missing out on one of the joys of being literate. This woman is a visionary writer. I'm reading a lot of short stories right now. I'm in the studio recording season 4 of LeVar Burton Reads, my podcast, where I read short stories. If anybody likes short fiction, come on over to the podcast. So I'm reading a lot of short stories right now, and short story anthologies to get ready for the season.
I always feel like that's such a loaded question. I noticed you didn't ask me, but I'm going to share anyway. And again, I'm sure the line here was for me. I'll share this one other quick story because I can. When the original announcement went out about this session, which we were so excited about, it listed the presenters alphabetical by first name. So Alicia came first. I sent it out to my kids and my family, my mom and everybody. And so one of my kids, smart Alec, sends me a note back. They're like, "Mom, you got top billing." I'm like, "It's alphabetical." But I'll take it. So I will also take this question and say, my favorite books tend to be whatever's motivating my kids at the time, right? My daughter right now has brought home a book of poems because she's in 4th grade and she's reading poems. I already shared my other daughter is this big Shakespeare lover. We're always talking about Shakespeare. I love whatever book is engaging my children in a desire to learn more, right? So there are a million great authors. Children's literature is amazing. It's an amazing space to be a part of because it's about storytelling. And how can we tell these stories in a compelling and engaging way? And I always find that my favorite book is whatever book I see a child picking up and saying, "Wow, I can relate to this. I want to read. I want to turn the next page. I want to figure out what else about this relates to my life." So I felt the need to share, even though it didn't say Alicia there on the question. I've got another one here. And please keep them coming. This is great. See, it's a conversation for all of us. How do you motivate readers who struggle with learning disabilities like dyslexia, where reading is very frustrating? And again, I'm sure that question isn't for me either, but I'm going to jump in. I actually think this is such an important one, right? This is where I think technology can be a remarkable solution. Technology is an enabler, right? It's not the solution to any one problem, but it enables us.
It's a tool.
It's a tool. I think that's 100% right. And I think that technology can really help us in many ways. With struggling readers, whether their learning disability is dyslexia or struggling reading in general, right? It's a tool that helps motivate them.
We have empirical evidence through usage in the app, as well as anecdotal evidence that kids who are on the spectrum, who have a difficult time focusing in other areas of their lives, when they come to the Skyberry app, they are able to spend more concentrated time engaged in a reading activity than almost any other activity that they engage in throughout the course of their day. So it's really a matter of finding the right tool for the job. I'm always looking for the right tool for the job, right? So I carry this. For me, it's the right tool for the job. I put ice in it in the morning, I've got ice water at night. It's the right tool for the job because I like ice water. The tablet appears to be one of the right tools for those who have attention deficit. And so we need to use that to our best ability to engage them and make them want to read as well.
Yeah, I think that's right. There's some groups out there that are doing some amazing work in the dyslexia space in particular. But again, I would broaden your question, really beyond that. Struggling readers reading is a tricky thing to teach, right? And there are so many levers, I'll go back to that term, that impact a child's ability to learn broadly, but to read specifically. And so, again, making sure that we create the right tool and we find the right groups that can focus on these very distinct issues, I think is critical. Another question here, I worry we kill literacy with the forced reading we do in schools. What can secondary teachers do to help older kids fall back in love with books? Do you want me to go first?
Sure.
See, because they're asking me. Do you notice how I've made this all about me? You are my people now. I actually think this is a great question. I also think that it's an important issue, right? 63% of kids entering 4th grade aren't reading proficiently, and that statistic stays consistent. And we have kids in 8th grade or 9th grade or 10th grade who have fallen behind and can't catch back up because the resources aren't there for them, right? They're reading at a 2nd grade level, for example. The resources for a struggling reader in 2nd grade are designed for 2nd graders, certainly not for 8th graders, right? So there's a real alignment necessary of resources for the children that are at that point, right?
We have to care enough about the population to create materials that they can use. It's no more complicated than that, right? We have spent so much money in our national budgets year after year after year on war and the machineries of war and the weapons of war, and we're letting the education of our children become so far down on the list of priorities. I wonder if it's more than just lip service every 4 years. We need to do better. We need to do better. We can do, but we are better than this. We are better than the way we have abandoned generations of our kids, sacrifice their educations on the altar of war. It's unconscionable. But this is what we've done, y'all. But there's hope. Right? We're all here, right? We care. We have a voice. We know how to get shit done. Right? It's time to roll up our sleeves, y'all. Get some shit done.
Well, and activate our networks, right? Education should be a central component of every conversation that happens, especially at the kind of legislative level. And it's just, I agree, it's fallen off, right? We don't talk about it. I don't think we talk about literacy enough, but we definitely don't talk about education enough at those levels. And how do we change that? We mobilize, right? It starts here. It starts here in this room, and for all those people that are outside watching in the hall, because there wasn't enough room for you in here.
Shout out to the folks in the hall.
That's exactly right. I know your questions are coming in, but we mobilize, we activate, right? I would say that's one of the lasting legacies of Reading is Fundamental. Again, I come from a generation that you couldn't turn on a Saturday morning cartoon that you didn't see a Riff commercial, right? You didn't see Carol Burnett or Ed Asner or somebody talking, Shaquille O'Neal in bookmobiles talking about the importance of reading. Riff's real legacy is the fact that we've built a community of literacy advocates in communities all across the country who remain committed to this issue. And we get hundreds of calls every month from people who are asking all kinds of questions. How do I volunteer? How do I do a read aloud? What are the best books to put on my shelf in my classroom or at my home? These are the questions that active people in their communities are asking about literacy. We enable that. We provide support and solutions. If everybody here leaves and activates their networks to talk more about literacy and education, I think that's where change happens.
Hashtag literacy in education, y'all. Hashtag literacy in education.
So another
Spread it
question
around.
here. Yes, spread it around. Activate your networks. In every episode, you encouraged viewers to seek truth for themselves. This one's definitely to you. This was so meaningful to me. What was your intention in including that line?
Of people seeking truth for themselves?
Don't take my word.
Oh. The intention was to communicate just that you don't have to take my word for it. Please don't take my word for it. I would rather you didn't. Because I could be one of those people that's trying to pull the wool over your eyes. Right? Which is why we pick up a book. And what? All right, let's get this out of the way. Y'all ready? No, you're gonna sing. You're not just gonna video me singing. Shoot, okay, but we all gotta sing, all right? Okay. Butterfly in the sky, I can go twice as high. Take a Y'all are beautiful, you know that? Give yourselves a hand.
That was awesome. I told LeVar they're going to make us sing, and I am not singing because then you would run me off the stage, right? I can't even hum. But that was awesome. But imagine that. Like, imagine a room full of people that can sing that song, right? That know that that's such a grounded part of you coming up and reading and being curious and learning. That's an amazing impact that you've had on people.
For the son of an English teacher, a single mom, raised 3 kids by herself. She was a social worker by day. At night, she went to night school until she got her her master's in social work, her MSW. Put all 3 of her kids through private school, knowing that education was the leveler, as you said, Alicia, of the playing field. Wanted to make sure that her children had the opportunity to cash in on the promises that America offered, even at least theoretically, to its black community. My mother was determined that her kids were going to experience the American dream if she had anything to do with it. Those are the kinds of parents we need, right? Those are the kinds of parents that are really serious about their legacy, about passing on their genetic line and why, right? That's the kind of commitment that works toward a successful society. I'm enormously proud of all of you because I feel like I had a hand in raising you.
You modeled behavior for generations of people. And that actually is one of the questions that comes up. It's directly tied to what we're talking about here. How will Skyberry lift up the voices and stories of the communities that are often marginalized?
By storytelling, the same way we've always done, by telling the stories that need to be shared, of the marginalized, of you name it. I mean, look, seeing oneself represented in the literature that we consume and in the popular culture that we enjoy is critically important to the development of a healthy ego. So we have to continually be aware of the need to continue to reach out and tell diverse stories from wherever you are, from whatever position or platform you hold. We have to look around and see whose story isn't being told, right? Because that's the only way it gets done, by including those who feel they're on the fringe. I've been the other my entire life, and I know I'm not alone in that feeling. So we have to keep reaching out. We have to keep expanding our horizons and pulling more people into the circle.
Because our actions influence people in ways that we couldn't imagine. Could you have ever imagined sitting here today and having a room full of people sing your song, or walking down the hall?
Well, it's Steve Horlick's song. Let me be clear. I want to credit the songwriter because he
I'm
deserves
giving you all
credit.
the credit.
Never in my wildest imaginings. There is a phrase that I've become pretty fond of that says, "You are your ancestors' wildest dreams." Right? They were thinking of me as they were bleeding and dying because they knew what they were dying and bleeding for, which was a future reality they would never experience, but knew we would never achieve unless they did what they did. And they laid down their lives so I could be here. I'll be damned if I'm not going to capitalize on that to the fullest.
Well, I just have to say, now your questions are just getting a little snarky. For LeVar, that's how this one starts. For LeVar. Okay. How can we best address the lack of diversity in children's book on a systematic level? And I think what you just said, you've modeled behavior and influenced generations at scale. Every parent, every educator models behavior and impacts the children that they interact with at their level. How do we address, this is such a critical question, thank you for whoever asked it, for LeVar. How can we address the lack of diversity in children's books on a systematic level at scale?
Well, the good news is this. We live in what I call the age of the democratization of content creation, all right? Which is to say there is no barrier to entry if you want to tell stories on whatever medium it is you want to tell stories. You want to be a filmmaker, videographer, author, you can write your story. You can get it illustrated. You can make your movie. You can get it out there. You can post it. You can find an audience. You can promote it. There are still, print is the last of the behemoth paradigms to fall, right? To join the modern world, the digital age. It's the oldest, right? So it's the most entrenched. And at one time I would have said we have to infiltrate those ivory towers with diversity and people who represent more than just a single demographic of, aging white men. Not that I have anything against aging white men. Some of my best friends are aging white men. Sometimes I crack myself up. But I would say that yes, we do need more people in those halls on Madison Avenue and in those large publishing houses and medium-sized publishing houses and independent publishers, right? We just need diverse storytellers, and you can do that now. You can find your way. And if that traditional paradigm is important to you, use where you are to get to where you want to go. Look at people like Issa Rae, right? Who started a podcast that became a webcast that became an HBO television series, right? Begin where you are. Take the step that's in front of you. The next step will reveal itself. Walking like life is a controlled fall. Walking is a controlled fall. Unless that we put that other foot out there, we're gonna fall on our face. But we are preternaturally predisposed to prevent that from happening because smashed noses are apparently not very attractive on the human being. So we walk, but we're always in the constant motion of falling until we don't. So if we take the step that's in front of us and trust that the next step will be there, we don't have to write the end of the story while we're at chapter 2. We can just live in that chapter and mine that chapter for all it's meant to give us and trust that chapter 3 is coming.
Well, and I think you're 100% right. Everyone is a storyteller.
Yeah.
Some of us tell stories on a broader scale, but everybody's a storyteller, and technology enables us to share our stories. Mm-hmm. So it's about in many ways, in my view, it's about the content and the stories that are delivered through the technology. I think if we can keep that in mind, we can have enormous impact. I think we have time for one more audience question, if that's okay.
I will say to add to what you just said, I have always believed that all media is educational, right? The question is, what are we teaching, right? It's all content dependent, y'all. And it's our job to put the best content that we can in front of our kids, because you well know that what you consume in your formative years becomes a large part of who you are as realized adults.
It informs who you can become. And this question from the audience.
Y'all are the proof of the pudding.
That's exactly right. So in a fast-moving digital world, LeVar, how do we make time to read like your mom, to model your mom's behavior?
It gets harder and harder, doesn't it? The faster and faster it feels like the world is moving and our lives are moving inside it. It's a choice. It's got to be a choice. Just have to choose, right? Choose. Choose this time for me. I'm going to spend 20 minutes reading for me. I deserve this time. I deserve this time. I'll take this time for me and read.
So I think this has been a wonderful conversation. I've enjoyed it very much, notwithstanding the fact that you all asked questions of LeVar. I do think it's been an exciting conversation. It's an important conversation to have. It's an important conversation to continue to have, so that we work to solve this problem, to address this issue. It's an exciting time for RIF, certainly, and for Skyberry, and the idea, again, that LeVar and his team would build this amazing resource to address all the things we've talked about, right? To engage kids in the power of reading, and to donate it to an organization, a nonprofit like Reading is Fundamental, to drive those outcomes. That's a legacy issue, right? How do you feel about passing on a part of your legacy to Reading is Fundamental? Saying nice things because I'm sitting right here.
You know this about me, and it will come as no surprise that I believe, and my mom passed last year, and I am so grateful that she knew before she went that all of this work that I have done for these many years is all in honor of her. So to add my legacy to the legacy of RIF, I know would make Irma Jean enormously proud.
Well, I cannot thank you enough certainly on behalf of Reading is Fundamental, but more importantly, of the millions of children that we serve every year. We generally reach about 11 million children a year. It's an unbelievable opportunity for us to do more, to reach further, to have broader impact. So on behalf of those kids, I just can't thank you enough. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.